Hi guys! Before we jump into today's episode, I just wanted to give a couple disclaimers. First one is that my Substack is now live. You can subscribe to She Knows the Score through the link in the show notes. The first newsletter is officially posted, and every newsletter thereafter will be posted the first week of every month. And the other thing I wanted to say is welcome to Candidate Month 2.0. This month, we will be focusing on candidates from all across the country. We have one from Illinois, one from New York, one from Nebraska, and one from Michigan. So this should be a fun month where people get to meet candidates from all across the country, and I'm very excited for this month. I know in November, I did Candidate Month with just Illinois candidates, and I'm so excited to get to be able to talk to people from all across the country that are running for office to create change. So this is the first installment of Candidate Month, and the next 4 weeks should be fun. I hope you guys like it. Hi everyone, welcome back to Current Affairs Unfiltered. I'm your host, Paige. This week we are back with another candidate episode. We are stepping out of state lines. I know I did a whole bunch from Illinois, but we are getting somebody from another state. This person is from New York, which is very exciting, and I'm just very happy to have other state representation. There are so many races out there that are so interesting to watch, and I also think it's very interesting to hear from other Democrats because all of their platforms are they're a lot of the same flavor, but they're very different, and they mean different things to the different candidates. So that was really the whole point of these candidate episodes. So it's nice to get somebody else's perspective that does not live in the same general area as me. So this week we are going to be talking to Cait Conley. Cait Conley is a Hudson Valley native, Army combat veteran, and national security expert. She served 16 years as an active duty Army officer, deploying 6 times to combat zones overseas and becoming one of the first women to serve on the tactical side of the Special Operations Unit, leading high-stakes missions in North Africa, Iraq, Syria, and Yemen to hunt down terrorists. Later, she led counterterrorism policy at the National Security Council and helped secure U.S. elections at the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. Now, Cait is running to unseat Mike Lawler in New York's 17th Congressional District. And if you guys don't know, the 17th Congressional District is just north of New York City. However, this district is very much working class. So let's learn about the 17th District and all about Cait Conley. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Cait. Cait, thank you so much for coming on. It is great to have you.
Are you kidding? Thank you for having me. I'm stoked for today's conversation.
Of course, it is my pleasure. So you've served on the front lines of national security, from combat deployments to the National Security Council. How does that perspective that you gained professionally shape the way that you approach politics and solving concrete real-world problems?
Where I've been, the stakes could not be higher, right, in terms of the lives of America's sons and daughters and doing the most incredible mission one could have, which is keeping America safer and defending our country and our people. And so the values, I think, that made me an effective Army officer, an effective leader, are really the same values that my community instilled in me at an early age, right? It's hard work. It's having the grit to persevere and to push through the hard. It's having the courage to do the right thing. And all of those values are what drove me after 9/11, to your point, Paige, to start my military career. Went off to West Point, graduated top of my class, and spent the next 16 years in the Army as an active duty Army officer, leading America's sons and daughters. And with that, my last 2 years serving at the National Security Council as the Director for Counterterrorism, and then as a senior executive in the Department of Homeland Security, working on a Homeland Security mission for our critical infrastructure here domestically, and how do we make that more secure and resilient. Paige, it just goes to show the importance of a functioning and competent federal government because of what is at stake and how the American people deserve not just the most effective military in the world, but the most effective federal government that's going to tackle challenges and ensure the safety and security of American families today and tomorrow. And that is just so much of the frustration I think that we experience with this current administration is we are just not seeing the level of competency and focus on the real problems that we need. And so that is why I'm doing this. And to your point, yes, I believe that, the decades I've spent from the trenches of combat zones to the White House Situation Room have prepared me to help lead through this, what is a very trying period in our nation's history.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of people that were in former government roles, a variety of different roles, that are stepping up to the plate and running for office. And I feel like a lot of it is because they kind of saw that front end of the dysfunction going on as Trump started to enter office. And it's inspiring to see people that had these roles go, this is not how it's supposed to be, and step up to the plate.
Yeah, I mean, we're in this to do the right thing for our country. And
Right.
that's where, national security is not political, it's patriotic.
Right.
These things transcend partisanship. And unfortunately, what we've seen with this administration is the weaponization of the executive branch in a way that is unprecedented for at least our generation and many generations before us. And
Right.
because of
Absolutely.
that, Americans aren't safer. We aren't more secure in the years to come. And that is where we have got to correct this path that we are on. We've got to get the ship back on track. That's what the American people deserve.
Right. So you've seen threats to the country and its systems up close. How does that experience inform the kind of leadership that you think Congress needs right now?
I spent the last 4 years working with Congress, working with members, with committees, helping write federal legislation, right, and oversee and execute national budgets. And too often we have seen politicians in elected political office put personal ambition first and country second. And that must stop. America is the incredible nation it is because we have had leaders that have answered the call to public service and who have made that their priority. And right now, I mean, you see it in just the American public's frustration and anger and unfavorability rating of Congress. Look, both sides have gotten us here. And I do not believe that the politicians who got us into this mess are going to get us out of it. And this is where, for me, in this fight for NY17 to unseat Mike Lawler, who is the embodiment of a politician who puts Mike Lawler first and everyone else second, the reason I'm doing this is because I love this country. And I want to make sure that our best days are still ahead of us. But we have a lot of work to do to make that true. And folks like Mike Lawler, who put themselves first instead of fulfilling their responsibilities to the people they represent in this country, are not going to be the ones who get us there. And
Right.
so this is about doing the right thing for America. And why you see, I think, so many folks stepping up, especially veterans, is for us, this isn't political. And there's also a generational component to this where I think we're just ready to have the mantle passed. The Democratic Party also needs to change, and we need to be more effective. And so that's where, look, I'm not a politician, but I am a battle-tested leader who has solved really hard problems for this nation. And that's what I want to continue to do.
Right. So we touched a little bit on, just the general dysfunction leading you kind of down this path, but you are stepping from more behind the scenes roles where the public doesn't really get to see who you are or what you do. And now you're putting your face everywhere. You are the public face of your own campaign. What made now the right moment to take your expertise directly to the voters and step out from behind the scenes?
It's the call to serve. I told you that when 9/11 happened, that was my first feeling of that responsibility to raise your hand and step into the fight. There is a saying in the special ops community, you run to the sound of the guns. That means you go where the fight is, because that is where your country needs you. And so this moment, to me, is that same call. We are broken on both sides. Our nation is so politically divided. We must heal. We can't continue to do what we've been doing. We must do differently. And that's where I feel so compelled because, look, I want this country to thrive. And right now, it's too hard for working American families to even survive. And so that call to serve is just so deep and strong that I couldn't let this moment go by and not answer it. We deserve better than what we have, and that has to change.
Absolutely. I feel like so many people underestimate the oath that people take when they join the federal government and how strong those convictions can be, because you are not the first person to say, I'm running because of the oath that I took when I started working for the government. Like, it's something that runs so deep, and the general public sometimes does not understand how deep that oath goes into who you are as a person and what your convictions are.
It really is a commitment, to put this country first. And that is a values-based way to live that doesn't just apply for a few years, right?
Right.
It becomes your value system that you navigate your life with.
Right.
And it is personal, right? My love for this country is deeply personal. And it goes back to, I believe our generation has a responsibility to honor the sacrifices that so many before us have made, to keep
Right.
America safe, to make it a better nation. And that means that ensuring America continues down a path that makes them proud of their sacrifice, to include many who made the ultimate sacrifice.
Right.
And that responsibility is something that I certainly feel like I will never shy away from.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's move on to some of your policy priorities. You briefly mentioned unaffordability. Housing is something that is very quickly becoming unaffordable for so many families. Beyond broad policy ideas, what specific solutions would you push in Congress to keep people in their homes or get people able to afford their first home or rent, whatever it is?
I mean, Paige, this is just such an important part of where we are in the Hudson Valley in NY17, but also in this country. I grew up in a blue collar family. So my great grandfather and grandfather worked in the brickyards here in the Hudson Valley. My dad was a construction worker, and my mom, she's been with the U.S. Postal Service for 48 years. It is this essence of people work really hard to help their communities, to serve, to build. And I think back to my mom, who raised three of us on her postal worker salary, where she could afford to buy a home in the Hudson Valley as a single mom raising three girls. And to try to imagine that happening today is just beyond feasible. It is not possible for working American families to thrive the way not that long ago they could in parts of our country, in the majority of our country. And so
Right.
you talked about housing. Again, my mom, working for the U.S. Postal Service, could afford to buy a home in the Hudson Valley as a single mom raising three girls. That's not a reality that families see today. So how do we get after that? How do we address that? And this is just one symptom of what is a larger economic issue that we are facing as a country. And I would argue pending crisis. Look, we are at a point in our nation's history where the economic prospects of young Americans are worse than the prospects of their parents or grandparents. If that's not a sign that we are failing, I don't know what is. Just this summer, we saw the recent college graduate unemployment rate exceed the national average. The challenges we are seeing to our communities and the economy and the workforce are very real, and we have to be able to address them. And so that is everything from, look, ensuring people have economic opportunity so they can afford to buy a home, to making sure that when they are in that home, they can afford to stay there, you know? And so some of those specifics, I mean, just look, they talked about how in the 1970s, the average age of a first-time homebuyer was 21. Today, the average age of a first-time homebuyer is 38 years old. This path, this trajectory cannot continue because it's the American working families that are suffering, right? The working
Right.
class. And so
Yeah.
in terms of specifics, I'll tell you, we've got to do more to increase housing availability that is within the price range that folks our age can afford, right? How do you get it to the point where there is housing that young families and young professionals can actually buy and invest in their 20s and 30s? Then you also need to talk about, what do those economic opportunities look like going forward? And this is where investing in things like the trade skills, like education and healthcare training. There are so many incredible opportunities that are going to persist despite what we're going to see in this workforce transformation from AI, that we really need to ensure we have the capacity to prepare the next generation workforce for, and we are steering the young kids towards, to say, look, you can have tremendous honor in working as an electrician, as a plumber, as a construction worker, as an HVAC technician, as a solar panel repair technician in your community. And those are career fields that you should have honor in and stability.
Right.
But this is where we really need to look at this comprehensively.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, housing is a much broader issue than just looking at housing on its own. And I am somebody that's on the receiving end of these policies. I'm 26 years old. I still live in my mom's house. I make a decent chunk of change. It really is unreasonable to me, with the amount of money that I'm making, that I feel as though I am unable to afford an apartment. And the only hope that I have for owning a home is that my boyfriend wants to be a big law attorney and will make much more than the median salary. The fact that that is my only hope that me and him could own a home is because he's going to make more money than I can fathom is not right. Like, that's the only hope that I have, that like things will work out for me. So it's a scary time for young people. And I was also on the receiving end of the recent graduates being unemployed. Although I am employed now, it took 9 months and a little bit of nepotism. Like it's a grim world out there for young people. So it's nice to see that there are politicians out there that care about this issue and want to help the younger generation, when for so long there's been so many older politicians that were like, well, just go hand your resume to the front desk person, just go get a home loan, like whatever it was. Like, that's not very good advice for the current moment that we're in. So it's nice to see it being dealt with in a more realistic way for the times that we are seeing.
Paige, it shouldn't put you in bankruptcy or extreme lifelong debt to just try to be in the American middle class, right?
Right.
And this is where we've seen things like the tuition rates at universities go up 41% over the last 21 years, or the last 20 years. Like, these are things that are not sustainable. And the cost of trying to, again, just have a career where you can provide for yourself, right? And pursue a family. Like, that is so unattainable for so many right now. You're not alone. And that's where we owe it to this generation to do better. And it goes back to, even when you buy a house, let's talk about here in the Hudson Valley. So even if you were able to afford a home, your ability to afford to stay in your home becomes a very real concern. You have our energy providers here in the Hudson Valley, companies like Con Edison and NYSEG, that are seeking double-digit rate increases on people's energy bills for the next several years, at a time where we already have 1.2 million New Yorkers behind on their energy bills now. And so this is just where things are getting worse for working class people in a way that you cannot blame people for their frustration with the political system that just seems to not be enabling them to have a chance.
Right. Absolutely. So let's move on to healthcare. Another hot button issue right now. So access is still a struggle for too many people. How would you work to expand coverage without raising costs?
I mean, right now we are seeing some pretty reckless policies that are making that even harder. Again, stepping back and looking at this bigger picture, one, it is absurd that in America, working Americans cannot afford health insurance. Like, that cannot be an acceptable state of affairs. But here you see this administration, enabled by Congress and by a Supreme Court, right? When you look at Medina versus Planned Parenthood and the decision earlier this year, where there is a war on women's health care. I mean, this administration, enabled by a GOP Congress and guys like Mike Lawler, where federal dollars cannot go to reimburse healthcare providers like Planned Parenthood, which is one of the largest healthcare providers for working women across this country. I'll tell you right here in the Hudson Valley, one of those chapters, we've got 11 brick and mortar clinics. We've got 2 mobile clinics. And in 2024 alone, they provided over 94,000 tests, diagnostic services, like overall healthcare screenings, like cancer screenings. And so when you talk about going after these types of healthcare providers, and they use this mask of, well, it's all about abortions, that's utter bullshit. Like, one,
Yep.
a woman should have a right to choose what happens to her own body, period. The government has no role in that, or should not have a role in that. But it goes so far beyond that. You're talking about basic healthcare access for women and men. Because you know what? Men also get treated at these facilities. And so that is part of this problem where, again, we're taking away affordable healthcare access for working Americans, especially young Americans. And then you see the continued cuts by this federal government to programs like Medicaid, which are America's most vulnerable, right? And we're making it even harder for them to get healthcare in a way that they could afford. This is where, I'm sorry, but if you're giving billionaires tax cuts and you're ripping healthcare out of vulnerable Americans, there's a special place for you. Like, this is not what this country is about. And so we have to have more responsible people in these key positions in government. Going back to, we also saw this administration pursue tariffs that literally raised prescription drug costs for Americans at a time where the conversations I'm having with people out across this district, you hear families making trade-offs to include seniors on fixed incomes between prescriptions and groceries. Come on.
Yeah. Inhumane is one word. One word I would use to describe it.
I almost said something you were going to have to edit out, so I stopped myself.
That's okay. Yeah, the healthcare, especially now, given we're recording this during the government shutdown, we're recording this on the day that they're cutting SNAP benefits. Like, healthcare is such a big concern. Costs are obviously going up. Like, it's people care about their healthcare. Like, that is something that is very tangible to a lot of people, even if you are a healthy person. Like, if you get sick and need to go to urgent care, you need to go to the emergency room, it's going to touch you eventually.
Yep.
When healthcare costs are this high.
I mean, premium costs, right? Like, so much of this is about the premium tax credits. And the
Right.
fact that we are not continuing those at a time where Americans are facing an affordability crisis.
Right.
People can barely afford their premiums now. And so at a time where inflation continues to go up, prices on regular goods, the ability to afford to stay in your home, or facing an energy crisis that's getting worse, we're going to pile on and also make having access to healthcare more expensive.
Right.
I mean, this is where, again, I am so disappointed, angry, frustrated with the dysfunction of the Republican-led government that we are seeing, where they are not putting the best interests of Americans and working American families first.
Right. Scary time. Scary time to be an American right now. So you've worked on critical infrastructure security. How does that shape your approach to ensuring local systems in the Hudson Valley are resilient, safe, and reliable, especially as we see election systems, cybersecurity, and even national security itself becoming politicized and also undermined?
Yeah, we have to make sure that we get leaders back in government offices that are going to ensure that national security is never used as a political pawn. This is something that transcends partisan politics, and it is unacceptable to see how this administration and this Republican-controlled Congress is just driving that every single day. The reality is we have never faced this level of complexity when it comes to the national security environment. Going back to, we've got two major oceans, right, giving us standoff and allowing for some degree of geographic isolation and protection. That doesn't really apply in 2025 like it did in 1925. The reality is everything we do in some way now has some degree of technology underpinning it. The connectivity of our daily lives is in everything we do. And so we have to look at national security in that new lens. And that means homeland security too. I mean, we have seen example after example of criminal cyber groups enabled by some of our nation state adversaries like Russia and North Korea and China conduct ransomware attacks against some of our critical infrastructure systems right here in the US. We've seen ransomware actors lock up hospitals around this country, forcing the redirecting of emergency care, shutting down ERs, shutting down surgical units. I mean, this is literally impacting the lives of Americans and the health of Americans. And so these are things that, again, we are facing at this increased frequency and severity because we're operating in a technological environment where even our critical infrastructure was never built with security and safety at the forefront. It was always speed to market, access to systems. It was that kind of tech driving marketing factors, not safety and security. And now we're feeling the pain of that. And so looking at what does safety and security for American communities look like going forward, you've got the complexity of things like cyber, you've got ongoing global conflicts, armed conflicts like the Russian war against Ukraine and the invasion of that democratic nation's sovereignty. You've got conflicts in the Middle East. There are just so many things. You've got a North Korea that is talking about expanding their nuclear arsenal, right? And an Iranian regime that restates they are committed to having a nuclear weapon. Iran, one of the largest global purveyors of lethal aid to terror groups, is talking about how they remain committed to pursuing a nuclear weapon. Like, what is at stake right now? The seriousness of today's national security environment cannot be overstated. And this goes back to why we need qualified people in these elected offices who understand what's at stake, who understand the complexity of what we must navigate and can hit the ground running on day one.
Right. And all of these systems have become politicized. And I hate to laugh, but like, it's so mind-boggling that all of these things, like the national security and everything attached to it, has just become involved in politics, and it shouldn't be. Like you said, national security is not political. It doesn't choose a side. It's just about keeping people and our systems safe. How would you work in Congress to try to depoliticize these systems, strengthen trust, and protect the institutions that keep this country safe?
I mean, governance is a team sport. And I really hope we get back to the point where we have two healthy political parties, where there are elected leaders who care more about America's future and national security than individual political ambitions and toxicity. We're not at that point right now. I want to help us get back there, because we do have very real challenges. I think we do need major national investment in our nation's critical infrastructure to raise the level of security and resilience. You know, one of the threat vectors that we have to absolutely take seriously is the effects of climate change and extreme weather. This is not a moral debate anymore. Climate change is a national security crisis. We are seeing how more extreme weather is leading to the deaths of Americans and the displacement of communities. That has to be addressed. Again, this is not political. This is just reality and protecting people. And so having that kind of focus where this doesn't need to be a moment of political activism, it is actually patriotic to work together to solve these problems. And I think just continuing to lead by example there, right? And to focus on the things that matter. And that is what the American people want. I mean, Paige, they're just so sick of dysfunction. They're like, well, it's convenient that Congress doesn't need to do its job. We don't have that, you know? And that's where I think the greatest thing that we could achieve is showing the American people that we can make American government work again and deliver real results.
Right. Right. Well, I'm one of those people that is very, very frustrated with the way Congress is running right now. And I feel like I've put so much of my hope for change into the 2026 midterms because there are so many fantastic candidates and change makers like yourself that are trying to get in there and say, let's fix this. Let's make this work for the American people. And it is part of talking to people like you that I'm like, we're going to do this. Like we're going to be okay because people like you have a plan and they have concrete reasons that they're running and things that they want to get done.
Paige, we have to stop failing the American people. We have to get the American government back to doing its job in a way where we are meaningfully delivering for the American people in the near and long term.
Right.
And this is where I do believe that, look, I'm not a politician. I am a battle-tested leader who has fought for this country and navigated really tough situations and dealt with the highest of stakes, from the trenches of war zones to the White House Situation Room. And I am stepping up now because I feel like the stakes are that high again. For so many Americans, us succeeding, us delivering is life and death. Can they afford to provide for their families? Can they put food on the table, a roof over their heads, keep the lights on, buy their prescriptions and groceries, and then have hopes that their kids can have a better future? These are very real things that we need to absolutely do better.
Right. You briefly talked about this already in one of your other answers, but the economy and workforce are areas that you want to make an impact. How would you help people understand that there are multiple paths to economic success? And what kind of policies would you champion to support diverse, resilient, future-ready jobs in your district and in the country?
I mean, I grew up at a time in a working class, blue collar family where I still remember literally pulling apart the couch cushions trying to find 50 cents so my mom could afford to buy a coffee at the deli on her way to work at the post office, right? For my family, for me, the pathway to the middle class and to a better future when I was growing up was getting a 4-year college degree. My parents didn't get those. They never graduated from college. But I will tell you, Hudson Valley public schools gave me the foundation to succeed, where I was able to go off. And I was able to earn degrees from places like West Point and Harvard and MIT, and that was awesome. But we're in a different phase of what the economy is going to be and what the future economy is going to be. And that is where I think we are seeing a growing number of American families who are still operating on what society told them back when I was growing up, which is if you want your kids to make it to the middle class or higher, the only way to do that is to go to some 4-year college. And Paige, I mean, you talked about it. The reality is the rate at which tuition rates have gone up over the last 2 decades has made college truly unaffordable for working families. And you see kids graduating who are so in debt, or their families are so in debt, that they don't see a path to getting out of it. And then they're coming out of schools and they're not finding jobs that are able to compensate them in a way where they could live on their own and pay their bills to include their student debt. And so this goes back to, look, the workforce and the economy changes over time. Technology and innovation is going to reshape what that looks like. And we have to be very grounded in the realities of what is happening today. You have productivity enhancements from AI that are going to fundamentally change so many different industries. And I'm a tech optimist. I think AI is going to help us solve some of our world's hardest problems, from how do we develop better tech to solve climate change to cure cancer. I'm pro-tech, but we need to understand how that tech is going to impact the workforce, be able to set guardrails so it does not come at the detriment of the American working class, and then ensure that the working class has those pathways to success that are still going to be there. And that goes into, like we talked about earlier, going forward. I mean, the trades are this incredible path to providing for families, providing for communities, and they're going to be there. You know, here in the Hudson Valley, healthcare and education, these are two other fields where technology is going to enable people in these fields, but not take them away. And so how do we help ensure that we have educational programs and training programs that encourage maybe members of the current workforce who want to pursue different paths because the one they are on is no longer there, or the emerging workforce to be successful? And that's where doubling down on things like vocational technical training. You know, here in New York State, we have something called BOCES programming, where we offer trade skill programmings where you can get certifications in the electrical trades, in HVAC technician program, you can get certified as an HVAC technician. You can do nursing. There are so many different ways that you can pursue that career field that best suits you, and it's affordable, right? And that is the type of programming I think we really need to focus on and expand. And even here in the Hudson Valley, I talk with teachers here regularly and about BOCES programs. And we do not have the capacity in our current programs to meet the demands of our high school kids. And that's wrong. That's us failing. If these kids want to be an electrician, we should have enough slots for them to get into the BOCES electrical trades programming. You know, and this goes into feeding programs like apprenticeships with unions and other things where, again, folks can stay in their communities and raise their family where they grew up in jobs that they can have tremendous pride and stability in.
Right. Well, that's part of why I live with my mom. Like, I love the area that I grew up in, but I cannot fathom affording an apartment on my own here. Like, I dream of being able to live in the town that I grew up in because I loved it that much. And I struggle every day with the fact that it is a potential that will not be a reality, that it has slipped so far out of grasp from when my parents moved there before I was born.
Paige, I've got two sisters who could not afford to move back and raise their families where we grew up.
Yeah.
This can't be okay, right?
Yeah.
Like, we've got to stop this trajectory we are on because it's not sustainable. And people should be able, again, to live where they grew up and have opportunity.
Right. Everyone always shames the people that, you know, never leave their hometown, but there's a difference between leaving your hometown voluntarily and being priced out to the point where you are unable to live there. Like, it makes me sad.
Couldn't agree more.
So let's move on and talk about the one and only Mike Lawler. On October 30th, the news broke that he is allegedly siphoning some money into his own company. And a few weeks ago, he confronted Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries in a public shouting match over the government shutdown, where, according to Politico, Lawler was needling Jeffries over his lack of an endorsement for New York City mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani and chiding the Democratic leader for his role in the shutdown. What is your take on his behavior? Because from my perspective, as somebody who does not live in New York, Mike Lawler was a complete unknown to me before these two incidents.
Paige, Mike Lawler cares more about people knowing who he is than he does delivering for the people who got him there. And that is just who this man is, right? The most important person in Mike Lawler is Mike Lawler. And that has been reflected in his decisions since getting elected in November of 2022. Especially with this administration, we have really seen his true colors, where his desire to run for higher office or hold other positions was absolutely the most important thing to him, to the point where he voted for the budget bill. The one big ugly bill that sits here and is crushing working families here in the Hudson Valley, stripping away health care, right? He is part of the Republican Party right now that is in control of government. As we enter into yet another week of this shutdown, where, again, we're about to see SNAP benefits and Head Start programs and funding cut starting tomorrow. And so this goes back to Mike Lawler cares about Mike Lawler. He doesn't have the ethics or the values that our community deserves in a leader because he's not one. And when it comes to the tactics he's willing to employ, I mean, we saw another incident earlier this year that was covered by some local newspapers where his field director in one of the Ford counties, who is an elected official as a county legislator, was literally pretending to be another person to infiltrate social groups that were opposing Lawler and tried to actually stir physical outrage during one of Lawler's town halls. I mean, the level at which this man is willing to employ tactics that I have literally seen our foreign adversaries like Russia use against America is unacceptable. Unacceptable. And so this guy's got to go, not just for the Hudson Valley, but for America, because he will never put America first.
Yeah. I got the same kind of impression when the story broke about him confronting, screaming at Jeffries. It very clearly to me seemed like a ploy for national media attention. Like I said, I'd never heard of that guy before in my life until he was screaming at Jeffries in front of media cameras. Like
He's a
sad to me.
Hack. Like
right,
he is just a political hack. He and I are the same age. We grew up a few dozen miles apart, right? Same part of the Hudson Valley. We could not be more different people or have led more different lives. For the last 20 years, Mike Lawler's been playing politics as a political consultant and operative before getting elected. When I've been leading America's sons and daughters in real combat zones to defend this nation and solve our national security problems. He doesn't know how to solve problems. He knows how to promote himself. And this goes back to Mike Lawler is more focused on being an entertainer to get media attention than he is being a problem solver and helping the people he represents.
Right, absolutely. So New York 17 is shaping up to be an incredibly tight race, which means every move matters and how you represent yourself, what you speak on, and what the public knows about you. How would your approach to Congress differ, and I know we covered this a little bit, from the kind of theatrics that Lawler seems to put on? And what do you think New York 17 voters need that they are not getting from Lawler right now?
I would describe us as Mike Lawler is the show pony. I am the workhorse, right? I'm not here to entertain and put up antics. I'm here to deliver. And that is the biggest differentiation I could ever make. You know, Mike Lawler is very good about showing up to places to hide the fact that he's not delivering for people. And that is something he can no longer outrun because people are facing it every day. You know, the question when I talk to folks who voted for Lawler that I ask, I'm just like, look, I get it. You know, the way he describes himself and portrays himself, he seems like a good guy who's working across aisles and, you know, really trying to do the right thing. But his actions reflect who he truly is. And we're going to see through that bullshit now. His actions show where his real priorities are. And that is not on helping people do better in putting food on the table, getting a roof over their heads, or giving their kids a better future. And they're seeing that, right? I mean, it's simple. I'm like, has your grocery bill gone up or down since Mike Lawler was elected? Has your energy bill gone up or down since Mike Lawler was elected? Do you feel better or worse about your ability to afford a home since Mike Lawler was elected? Do you feel better or worse about your children's economic prospects since Mike Lawler was elected? There's not a positive answer to any of those questions. And so it's time to hold him accountable.
Right, absolutely. So onto your primary race, there are multiple Democrats running in New York 17. What do you bring to this race that distinguishes you from the rest of the field?
Yeah, and I should say, you know, over this journey, I've gotten to know all of them personally. And they're good people. Like, this isn't personal. But this is about winning. Because the only way we get to fix this mess is if we get to govern. And the only way we get to govern is if we win. And beating Mike Lawler is going to be a lot of work and very hard. And it's going to take getting people, not just Democrats, but people, to choose the Democratic candidate over even their own political party. And that is where, as the only person who's born and raised in the Hudson Valley with deep blue-collar roots, the only one who's gone off to combat and actually fought for this nation, is the only one who's actually worked with members of Congress and committees and written federal legislation, I know I am ready to not only kick his ass, but also deliver for our communities on day one. And that's what this is about. Enough talk. We need to act.
Right, absolutely. We talked about it a little bit earlier. Many voters are frustrated with Democrats in Congress. What is your suggestion for how Democrats can prove that the party can deliver results for everyday Americans rather than just, talking points?
Paige, by doing it. I mean, this is where the path forward isn't complicated. It's getting real people who have real experiences and who are going to deliver real results. And that is the only way we not only get the Democratic Party back on track, but the American people to have confidence in our government again. And so I have to say, we launched this campaign just over 7 months ago, and we've raised nearly $1.5 million. We've received local endorsements and national endorsements. We've been able to build up this incredible volunteer base here in the Valley. Like, the amount of support that we are getting is humbling, but also inspiring as hell, right? And I think what people tell me really gets them fired up is, I'm not a politician. They're so sick of it. They want to see the next generation of leaders emerge who are going to do it differently. We don't need 20 more years of the old. We need 20 more years of new, focused results.
Right. So let's start to wrap up and talk about maybe some more hopeful things. You are running at a moment that so many people are feeling deeply anxious about safety and the country's future and their future. What do you think voters need to hear most from their leaders right now? And what about that gives you hope about your district and the country, even in such a turbulent time?
Part of building trust, and that is what we're really talking about, is building trust between people who are leading and people, is about, one, having the humility to listen and understand where we may be missing the mark, and understanding where we need to do better to have meaningful impact in the ways that they need. And I can at least say for myself, look, I see where people are frustrated and feel like we're failing them. I get it. My family, also working class, we struggled too. Now, we hear it, we get it, we live it. You're not alone. And we're doing this because we agree this cannot continue. We must do better. And that sense, and the folks who you see coming out, right, to events like No Kings rallies, it's not just Democrats. It's people who are frustrated because even if they voted for Trump or Lawler, they're like, this isn't what I voted for. You're not delivering on any of the things you said you were going to. You're not making it better for me. Instead, you're doing things like throwing hoods over the heads of Americans, putting them in unmarked cars by agents wearing masks. That's not what America is. I've seen this play out across the world. That's what happens in war zones, in places that aren't America or democracies. And so you just see what I think is this unifying feeling of frustration. But it's becoming something where people are like, we will no longer be silent. This is unacceptable. We will demand more, and we will act to ensure that it happens.
Right. Yeah, that's absolutely something that I'm seeing here in Illinois and, via social media across the country. It's heartwarming to see people starting to come together, and it makes so many people feel less isolated in their feeling of like, am I the only one that thinks this is insane? Like, if anything, the No Kings rally is showing, no, you're not crazy. People are frustrated. Let's get out and do something about it.
Yeah, and it's not one side or the other, Paige. It may have started
Right.
that way, but I think what you see now is younger folks showing up too, who, again, it's not even about political affiliation. It's about America. It's about,
Right.
as Americans, what we need for a better future and what
Right.
we are willing to say our nation stands for.
Right. Absolutely. Couple of softball questions before we cut out. Do you plan to continue getting in Twitter fights with the one and only Mike Lawler, or is that a one and done thing?
Paige, I mean, if the man is too scared to respond, I can't do anything about it. I will happily go toe to toe with this guy any day, and I will continue to hold him accountable. He can continue to run and hide, but we're going to find him. And at some point, he's going to have to answer for the wrongs he's done.
Right. I just thought it was hilarious because when an incumbent politician is responding to an opponent that, mind you, the primary has not happened yet, they are threatened. They are threatened by the person that is coming after them. Like, it just rang so clear in the whole Twitter exchange.
And he should feel threatened because
right,
people are going to choose a leader that they respect and trust. And
right.
he has demonstrated he is not that guy. So
right.
yeah,
absolutely.
that seat, he is vulnerable. And I'm not stepping back. I'm coming out there and we're going to fight this out. And I'm going to make the case to the voters of New York 17 that I am the person who will actually fight for them and deliver.
Right. Absolutely. And last question, what is your go-to or favorite restaurant in New York 17?
Okay, so we have an ice cream shop called the Blue Pig in Croton.
Okay.
That I don't want to confess how many times a week I go to, but it's incredible. And I may be going there after this.
Is it like what's special about it? Is it homemade or?
Oh, it's all homemade. They use local ingredients from different farms, from their own garden, and the range of flavors they make. They have this vanilla sugar cone that is incredible. They have this pumpkin cream in the fall. They actually do a flight of ice creams where you can get 6 single scoops. I might get that.
I'm going to be in New York in a couple weeks. I'm literally going to have to get an Uber out to Hudson Valley to go there.
In Croton. It is worth the stop.
Okay. I will write that one down for my trip. Well, that is all that I have for you. Is there anything else that you feel like I might have missed?
No, I mean, I appreciate the breadth of the conversation, right? And just talking about, I think, the issues that are impacting people on a daily basis, from affordability to, again, even national security when we're talking about failing critical infrastructure.
Right.
And this is real life. You know, we have issues here in the Hudson Valley where, because of flooding events that used to be once a year or even once a century, now happening more frequently, we have people getting flooded out of their homes because the drainage systems can't handle the volume of water that comes with a rainstorm. I mean, we have so much work to do to just help working Americans that there's no more time to waste.
Absolutely. Well, I will have your campaign website linked in the show notes so that people can go check you out. They can perhaps even donate to you if they are so inclined. And yeah, that is it. Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. Like I said, it's fantastic to talk to candidates, and it's fantastic to talk to people that are ready to get out there and fight and are not interested in just rolling over the way it feels like a lot of Democrats in Congress have right now. That's
not what built America, you know? Mm-mm. So here is to good people fighting the hard fights and winning for the right reasons. So
absolutely.
No, thank you, Paige, for having me on. Thanks for the awesome conversation. And yet, whoever's interested, the website, it's easy, just caitconley.com. And we love the support. We couldn't do this without the support of people out there. And so here's to keeping up the fight and making sure we deliver.
Hell yeah. Best of luck.
All right. Thanks so much, Paige.
Of course. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode of Current Affairs Unfiltered. I really hope you guys loved hearing from Cait as much as I loved hearing from her. I was so excited when somebody on her team reached out to me and really feel like she was able to give a good explanation about what national security is, which I really appreciate. I took a national security, like just introduction to national security class in my master's program, and one of the first things my professor said to the class was national security is like everything. However, when you keep excusing things under, it's because it's a national security concern, it's a national security concern, it's a slippery slope, is what I will say. So I feel like Cait really gave like a great explanation as to what falls into that umbrella and how it is truly everything. Like, it is our domestic policy that feeds into what national security is. And I'm also very eager to continue to watch this primary and this race. Mike Lawler, as we talked about, has been going after some kind of media attention things lately. So it'll be interesting to see, because I think he very clearly feels threatened by Cait specifically. It'll be interesting to see how this race continues to develop. As I mentioned in the episode, if you would like to donate to Cait, I will have her website and social media linked in the show notes, so you guys are more than welcome to go check that out. If you know somebody that lives in New York's 17th district, please send this to them so they can learn more about Cait. And yeah, so I will see you guys next week. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to follow, leave a review, or share it with someone who could use this information. And as always, if you have questions, topic suggestions, or just want to say hi, you can find me on social media at Current Affairs Unfiltered Pod on Instagram, or send me an email at currentaffairs.unfilteredpod@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. Keep asking questions, stay engaged, and continue to pick social media fights with your Republican legislators. I will see you guys next week.